ditch me. That's fine, I've got other friends, better friends. This was about 10 years ago but still makes me smile. At 18 my best friend, Vic, and I used to go out dancing or drinking most weekends. Coming up to Saturday night I messaged to ask about plans. She said she didn't want to go out. Fair enough. Or so I thought until I bumped into a mutual friend. Mutual friend asked why I didn't want to go out with her and Vic on Saturday night. I was confused as I wasn't aware we'd fallen out, but it appears Vic had just had a better offer and decided to ditch me. I get home in a proper strip and my older brother's friend was there and asked what was wrong. I explained and 10 minutes later he had gathered around 10 lads to take me out. They all knew the situation and were game for a wind-up. Vic's face when I walked into the bar surrounded by lads fighting over who got to buy me drinks was classic. They continued to play by ignoring her in my favor and chasing off any male attention she got. She ended up leaving early and messaged the next day nice as bye. I should clarify that these boys are like brothers and were purely out to cheer me up. Don't try to tell me boys can't outbetty girls. TL/Doctor. My female friend ditched me on a night out and so my brother's friends take me out instead. A tale of mailboxes, baseball bats, and a broken wrist. When I was young, maybe 3rd grade, our road was hit with a spat of mailbox vandalizing. We lived in a rural area and teenage boys would drive down the road, leaning out of cars and using a baseball bat to bash in mailboxes as they drove by. Now, I'm talking miles of state highway, starting just outside of the city limits of the town seat and continuing almost to the county line. People were irritated. Mail wasn't getting delivered, this was happening every weekend, and nothing was being done about it because rumors of the boys belonged to some powerful local families. After repairing or replacing our mailbox 3 or 4 times, my dad hit upon a plan. Now, my dad is not someone to mess with. 6'3", 225 pounds. Worked our farm, worked a factory job. At one time he was the only person in the company to know the formula for a very expensive, very specific paint for an NASCAR driver, coached every sport my brother and I played and played softball and basketball himself when he could find a few spare hours. He's not someone I would mess with today, and he definitely wasn't 30 years ago when this happened. Anyway, Dad got some 1/4 iron plates and welded together the prettiest mailbox you've ever seen. It looked almost like a birdhouse. Painted it black, hung it from an ornate iron post cemented into the ground. It hung from chains, so it didn't seem as heavy as it actually was, thus the need for the cemented post. Stenciled the name and address prettily on the side. He hung it up on Monday. On Friday night, he sat outside after dark and just waited. He heard them coming. The boys weren't quiet about their activities, and he could hear the thuds and pings as they hit the neighbors' boxes along the road. Then, disaster. The sound the aluminum back made when it made contact with the iron mailbox was legendary. It sounded like a gong. The scream from the boy holding the back was almost enough to make my dad feel bad, he said later. The tires screeched, the car turned around and headed for town. Dad found a badly dented back by the road the next morning and one boy showed up with a broken wrist the next week at school. They stopped destroying mailboxes after that, though. That mailbox still exists, too, rusty and worn but still usable. Keep taking things out of my cubicle. Now you're going to get sick too, Doc. This was pre-pandemic, but I'm kind of a germaphobe anyway. I work in a warehouse and the leadership team uses radios to communicate. Not only did everyone make fun of me for always sanitizing everything in my cubicle at the end of the night, but one manager in particular would always steal my pens and radio. He came in about 2 or 3 hours before me and was always too lazy to walk to his office to get his own. I used the label printer to put my name on it, started using really girly colored pens, and even locked my stuff up at the end of the night to no avail. Every day I would come in, my desk drawer would be broken into, filing cabinet type, so if you really dorked it enough you could break it open, and he thought it was some big joke, made worse by the fact that I would Lysol everything once I hunted him down and got it back because he never washed his hands either. Well, one day I came down with some sort of cold or flu and suffered through the workday, but this time purposely didn't sanitize anything at the end of the day. Guess who came in feeling like dog shit a couple days later? Wash your hands and keep them off my ship. Dad screams at me for reading books, so my mom gives him a sunburn. Hey guys, this isn't my own personal Pettyrevenge, but I'm involved. When I was younger, around the age of 13, I'm 20 now, and my mom used to encourage my sister and me to read as much as we could. For this reason, I would love to take books with me everywhere. One day my family was taking a trip to Cartagena, Colombia to enjoy the beach for my sister's birthday. We were living in Colombia at the time. Even back then I wasn't a big fan of the beach because I hated how the water was so cold and salty and the feeling of hot sand on my feet. I just never liked it. So I opted to just read my Chronicles of Narnia book on a beach towel under the umbrella. It was at this point where my father started to scream at me to go into the water because we took such a long trip to get there. The trip was about 2 hours. I told him I'd get in when I finished the chapter I was on. I just said that to please him. It was at this point where my father took the book from my hands and told me he wouldn't give it back to me for the rest of the trip. We were staying in Cartagena for 3 days, so I was kinda pissed. Now, enter my mother. My mother is the kind of woman who gives people chances and is slow to anger unless they mess with her children. My father was frustrated with the trip for a multitude of reasons, so he decided to take a nap on his towel. One thing to mention is that Colombia is a very hot country, especially in Cartagena, and we were in the middle of summer and were on beach at the hottest time of the day. So normally my mother would have woken up my father in a situation like this. But as she was fed up with the way he had treated me that day, a light bulb went off in her head. She noticed he fell asleep about a foot away from the shade of the umbrella with no sunscreen on. She thought to herself for a sec, and decided to go back sunbathing and acting like she hadn't noticed anything. He was asleep in the sun for 5 hours. It was safe to say he had a sunburn for the next week. He couldn't even sleep properly for the rest of the trip because his body ached so much. My mom didn't tell me this story until after she divorced him because he was an emotionally abusive father to my sister and I, and didn't treat my mom right. I love this story because my mom never stood up to my father directly, but when she saw the chance she would act all innocent and let him bury his own grave. It was a small victory for her, but a victory nonetheless. Plus I thought my mom was a badass after telling me this. Also, this story is funny to me because I hate reading now. My sister is the fastest reader I know and can finish a 500-page book in one day, but reading has never been my forte. Hope you enjoyed the story and have a great day. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you on next video.